Welcome to another Sound Truth chat with Micah and Adam. I'm Adam Miller, and I'm joined once again by Micah Lovell as we are continuing our series looking at a proverb a day in May. It leads us today to Proverbs chapter 15, which brings up a lot of really great content, but stay tuned for that as we delve into how to read the book of Proverbs, as well as some of the principles that are easily drawn out in this book of wisdom. So Micah, once again, thank you for being a part of the many voices for that one message.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. It's been a fun couple weeks.
Yeah,
fun. It's fun to work through this with someone else. So I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, sometimes just vocalizing an idea can give it a little more volume. You're hearing yourself kind of express an idea. For me, it requires a little bit more study than just the cursory glossing over these texts, which is actually really helpful. But it's always good to share what we're learning with a good friend. So,
absolutely.
Well, today brings us to the book of Proverbs again. Proverbs 15. We're halfway through this month and halfway through the book of Proverbs. Just to reiterate this series, the idea of a proverb a day in May is to read whatever chapter is associated with the calendar day of the month, because there are 31 days in May and there are 31 chapters in Proverbs. And so it gives us every day a little bit of wisdom. This is not at all original with me or with our ministry. This has been going on for years, Micah, and yet it is something that we really want to bring to the fore, because people may not be aware of it or the value of it. But this is a pretty common theme, right?
I think so. I think there's enough in Proverbs that needs unpacking. So the opportunity to do that and just to take it a chunk at a time and to work your way through it, I think it's been an obvious thing for people to do for a while. I'm glad that we're doing it. I hope we can restart something new in a new audience and try to incorporate more people into this practice.
Yeah, it's definitely a worthwhile for me. I've been doing it, I think, since I was probably in junior high. I started doing it, and it's been such a valuable treasure for me. It's something that is worthwhile of sharing. Like, you want other people to benefit where you've benefited, and that's kind of thematic even in the book of Proverbs, right? Because this is Solomon who has gathered up all of this wisdom, and he's trying to pass it on to his children. He's preparing his son to one day be the king over Israel, and Solomon, being the wisest man to ever live, he's kind of gathered up all this wisdom from a lifetime. Therefore, there's a lot packed in here. It's not something you can just download into your brain. It's something you have to kind of spend the time and the years, the process of learning it.
That's right. And now we're in this new section where, the last week we were kind of towards the tail end of that opening section. And now things get a little trickier. There's a little more technique that it takes to kind of figure out what's going on. So it's good that we can kind of walk through this process together and just make sure that we're tracking and that we're getting all the things that are in there.
Yeah. The first 9 chapters of Proverbs is all kind of a letter. It has a flow. It has a thought. There's kind of, you can read more than one verse at a time and connect where the thought or the logic is moving. But after you get to 10 and thereon, it's more what we're familiar with in looking at the book of Proverbs, where these standalone kind of proverbial statements that give insight into wisdom, collected obviously by Solomon from various different sources, just generally wise truths. But we also know that there are generally wise statements that have been around circulating throughout the culture. And so he's collecting these and putting them together in a book. And it seems, at least on the surface, that it's really disorganized, that it's just kind of the catch-all closet or the junk drawer where everything you have is kind of thrown into the same spot. But there's actually a method to the madness, right?
Yeah, there's a structure. There's a definite flow, even though it doesn't seem like a narrative flow, how we traditionally understand it. I would recommend, if possible, our listeners and watchers and readers and viewers and whatever else people are today, followers, I guess, that they go find this book. This book is very helpful. How to Read Proverbs. It's by Tremper Longman. And this is a really helpful small book, very practical, walks you right through a lot of the scholarship that surrounds it, much in the way that a study Bible would, but goes into a little bit more depth. And it does allow you to kind of start to see what's going on in Proverbs, start to see it in a historical perspective, and also how to parse and sort through these, what, as you said, proverbial statements and these standalone things. Why are they not right next to each other? And, why are they where they are? And what's the main argument of this proverb? Well, he kind of answers how to perceive that as you read. I would definitely recommend the book to our listeners and our followers. It's been a huge help, and I'm going to be talking about some of the things that I've learned from that book today.
Yeah. It's a challenge, because you'll be reading through a chapter and you'll be like, hey, did I just read that? And then you'll go back a couple chapters and you're like, yeah, I just read, it's almost this exact same verse rephrased. If you're not going to sit down and read through large chunks of it, you're probably going to miss that component. But one of the values is you're kind of getting an equal dose of the same medicine every day. There's just about every chapter talks something about fearing the Lord, which is really the beginning of wisdom. We see that in chapter 1. So there's a theme that's making sure that we're never getting too far away from that as we're going chapter by chapter. It just keeps bringing that up so that we're reminded of the very beginnings. The starting point of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. I noticed this theme when I first started trying to study through Proverbs when I was a kid. I was probably in junior high, early high school, that I started doing this on a regular basis. And I just have one of those analytical brains that's trying to make sense of chaos and trying to find order where there doesn't seem to be order. And one of the things that I started doing back then, this is well before, cell phones were popular and emojis were a thing on social media. But I started drawing next to the verses, little emojis, little symbols that talked about the themes. And as I was doing that, as I was pausing to reflect on all of those various themes, a little red heart next to a verse that talks about the heart, a little mouth when it talks about the lips or the things that we say, anger, kind of little angry face, or the fool, kind of a dunce cap, I think is what I used. You have all of those themes that reoccur, and when you start to see them, it can actually be very helpful to understand that pattern, the repetition of it. So if you're struggling reading through Proverbs, or if you're just reading it and you're not getting anything beyond just whatever pops out for you for that day, I encourage you to try some practice that gives you some insight into the kind of themes that are present. And when you start to nail down what is the most prominent themes, it does affect how you read through the text. But there's more to it, right, Micah? Because we know generally how to read epistles, right? There's a logical thought that's being unpacked. So there's a way, even with some scriptural notes and some skills, that you can learn how to block outline a text and walk away with it with better understanding. With narratives like the Gospels or some of the Old Testament books that are telling stories, you can kind of draw out, as you kind of step back, reading through the stories, a principle that is central to it. And even when we're reading the Psalms, we love to read the Psalms. With that poetry, there's a way to break it down in its structure to understand the main point. But there's a completely different skill about the book of Proverbs, and you're probably more in tune to help us understand that.
Right now, all I'm in tune with is, I think I'm with the rest of the Song Time listeners and Sound Truth followers, that we really would like to see this Bible of yours from junior high, so we can see all your liner notes and your emoji faces written in the scriptures next to the word of the Lord. We have your notes in there. Or maybe it's just me. I don't know. I could be alone. But you are right. There's a particular way to read the Psalms. There's a particular way to read an epistle. There's a way to read the histories, and I think there's a way to read the Proverbs as well. The one thing I would caution everyone, and this may be widely known by this point, I would caution readers on this point: Proverbs are not universal truths. There is a definitive context for which they belong, and within that context, you can find the source or the meaning, but we should not take a particular proverb and elevate it as some sort of thing beyond what it is, that it's this universal truth that everyone can recognize. Is not that. It's not meant to be that. It's a particular context, which we laid out in the very first episode of our chat about what the context is: a king to a prince, a father to a son, and telling him the way to choose. And so for that son, there were potential options. There were potential things that he could choose. He could choose to follow folly or to follow wisdom. And this is the way of wisdom. So it's a path. And we need to think about the Proverbs that we read as the particular path that one ought to take if they are to become wise. And of course, the source of wisdom, we already talked about this in episode 2, was Christ. And it's following after the things that Christ has said. So Proverbs, practically speaking, is a book of practical wisdom and ethics. Those two things are both at play here. And if we think about that as we read through it, we should be able to define between the two. When we're going over, say today, when we're talking about 15, we should be able to find which verse is sort of fitting in which of those categories, which is something practical that we can take with us in particular, or which is something that tells us something more about our Creator, our Savior, and that helps us to use discernment as we go through life, following and pursuing Christ. And so when we keep those two things in mind, there's an ethical path that is essentially what to think and what to do, and the practical wisdom is something that you can help yourself to in a situation. If you're in that situation, here's a good out. But Proverbs is really more about how to think than what to do. If you go to Proverbs and open it up trying to get yourself out of a particular situation, and you just read the passage and treat it like a universal truth, that's not necessarily going to be the wise thing to do there. So the wise thing to do would be to hide these words in your heart, meditate on them, as we've talked about. We keep saying, contemplate, lift them up before your mind, and pursue what is the actual thing being taught there. Is something that's telling you how to think and what to do, or is it something that's telling you something else about your Savior?
I think you bring up an important point, because when we are looking through the principles of Proverbs, we can walk away with right behavior, good things to do, but it changes when we look at it through the lens of the gospel, which is something we stress a lot here through our ministry, is how to read the gospel in the Old Testament. And some of our listeners might be struggling to see that point, because they're looking at, commands of do right, do what's good, and don't be a fool. And they're walking away without understanding how that applies to the gospel. It seems like works related. So how do those fit into the overall theme of the gospel narrative?
Well, yeah, we have to make sure that we don't make the Proverbs a new law of things that we must do now. That is not, again, the intent of what's being implied or the goal of Solomon. This is a way of helping us to go through life rightly. In fact, there's a lot of the practical things can benefit us. We see that there are ways that wisdom can lead us toward a life that has greater benefits than the way that the foolish choice might have some natural consequences. And this works in the life of a school. Is where I work during the days at a school, and we talk about natural consequences all the time. If one were to make a particular bad choice, there's a certain natural bad thing that comes of that. And it doesn't say anything about the ethics of the person doing it. It's just a consequence. Well, likewise, the practical aspect of the Proverbs tells us that there are things that we can do in life to better our positions, and there are things that we can do to make it worse. But just because we better our positions doesn't mean that we are justified before Christ. So we can't let this override the gospel. In fact, the gospel tells us it's an objective fact. Jesus did die. He was buried. He was resurrected. Gospel is done. Law is due. We do not want to make a new law here, and it's telling us something that we must do, therefore, to be saved or to be Christian. It's not at all what is going on. So this is a way of helping us to walk through life rightly. And by discerning these principles and by applying them to our lives and by incorporating them into the way that we think about God, that will help us to already to discern rightly, to discern justly, and to be merciful to those around us. So it's a practical benefit to our Christian growth and spirituality, but it is not meant to replace the truths that are in the gospel. So we have to look at this book through the lens of the gospel rather than the other way around.
I think that kind of leads us right into with our proverb a day in May. We've taken aside one proverb that really kind of resonates with us, or a theme that's in the chapter, and talked about it specifically. And that leads right into what I would choose as my proverb a day for today would be verse 32 of Proverbs 15. Whoever ignores instruction despises himself, but he who listens to reproof gains intelligence. With what Micah was just saying, the importance of seeing the command to do what's right. As Christians, there is within us now a desire to please God, to do what is right, and to grow in our instruction, to grow in our faith, and to grow in our sanctification. And if that's the case, if that's the impetus now of our life as believers, as followers of Christ, then we need to be wise to be able to accept instruction, to accept criticism in a loving manner, to have edification, to have those structures around us regularly to build us up in our faith. And that's what Proverbs is so important, because it is a kind of a stick. It can be a rod, as it says, in other Proverbs, that instruction can be a rod to the fool, but it is instruction, is help to the wise. We need that in our lives so that we can be good stewards of what God has given to us, so that we will grow in wisdom and grow in understanding, to be a better example of the gospel, to be better salt and light. And I think that's really critical. So I would choose verse 32 as my proverb a day, and just the importance of remembering how to accept instruction so that we can grow beyond our limitations of where we are currently. What's your proverb of the day, Micah?
Well, that's a good one. I like that whole section of 31 through 33. And so I actually chose as mine verse 31, which is, the ear that listens to life-giving reproof will dwell among the wise. And so I tell people all the time, the best thing you can do for me is tell me when I'm wrong. And I don't know if I'm the only person who's like that. I hope not. I feel that sometimes it's seen as really negative to tell someone something that's not a positive thing about themselves. And for myself, I feel that the thing I need most is to be told when I'm wrong, and so that I can correct it, I can change, or at least be given the opportunity to change. If I'm not even given the opportunity to know that I'm doing something wrong, how is it going to get any better? And this proverb strikes right in the heart of that practical wisdom, which is that the ear that listens to life-giving reproof or correction, the ear that listens to life-giving correction will dwell among the wise. And this whole proverb has all these themes of wise counsel comes in the form of a multitude of voices, and putting yourself around people who can tell you the truth, even when you can't see it yourself. This kind of sums that up, and I think helps us to see that we need other voices around us, especially the Holy Word of God, to correct us when we are wrong, and that will only help us to grow better and stronger and closer to the Lord and to the community that He has placed us in.
Some great advice and great wisdom, especially as we think about the fact that I'm not who I was a year ago, or thank God I'm not who I was 10 years ago. I'm not that kid in junior high who's still drawing emojis next to my verses, but that was a season that was really helpful for me, and I've grown, and I'm growing more, and I'm growing each day. So if that's the progress that we want to hit, we want to emphasize, then we need to have insight. We need to have friends around us that can offer us help and instruction, correct us when we're wrong, and we need to be able to accept that, so that we know that our goal is not to remain where we're at, but our goal is to be transformed into the image of Christ. So I think that's a good place to close in prayer, and just remind us of our goal and our purpose of reading through these Proverbs a day is to be shaped, to be refined, and to have that old exterior broken down, chipped off, chiseled away, so that we might shine as who we were meant to be, and who we are being transformed into. So Father, we thank you for this time together. I thank you for Micah and his wisdom and insight and relationship that he is in my life, a friend that is really giving me that refinement, that process of challenging me to be better. And I pray that I might be a friend to him, and that we might together be friends to those who listen in and who are tuned in to grow, that we might be as friends, iron sharpening iron, as those who are often, we are easy to accept the compliments, but also, Lord, the friend who is able to speak truth, and to do so that it might hurt us, but it also gives us the impetus to grow in our faith. So may we be good stewards of the friends that we have. May we be good stewards of our time and our study of your word, so that it would transform us even now into the image of Christ. So we thank you for your word. We thank you for the book of Proverbs. We thank you for that you have promised to give us wisdom if we seek it. And so, Lord, may we be wise in the time to seek after you and to find our great reward. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Micah, once again, thank you for being a part of our Sound Truth Chats and helping us understand greater details of the book of Proverbs.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I'll see you next week.